Batman Begins, man, is in my opinion, like Batman Begins and Dark Knight are here, man. Like they're here. They're neck
Okay.
and neck. You know what I mean?
Okay.
Like
That's a bold statement too. Yeah.
I think they're both just as good as the other.
Hello, friends. I'm Anderson Marchak.
And I'm Ricardo Segura.
And we are the Panel Bros. Welcome to the panel.
Welcome to the panel.
So here we are continuing our breakdown of the filmography of Christopher Nolan.
Oh, yeah.
In Nolan we trust.
Yes, we do. Amen. 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 Amen.
And we have now arrived at Batman Begins.
Bro, we're obviously going to gush about it, but my God, I was so happy when we discussed doing the Nolan filmography, because I was like, we're going to get to these Batman films and Batman Begins, man. And again, we'll talk about it, but I feel like, you know, because The Dark Knight is goated, that sometimes people forget just how amazing Batman Begins is.
Right.
And we're going to discuss it.
Yeah, I'm glad. And it's we're just getting started. We have quite a few movies to get through here.
Yeah.
So, but I being a Batman fan, as all of you folks know, and Ricardo knows, Batman's my favorite superhero. So I'm excited to do these, and it'll be nice to get, you know, broken up in between with the movies that Nolan got to do in between as well. So
yeah.
So here we go.
Let's do it.
Batman Begins was released on June 25th of 2005. And let's get started.
Yeah.
Alrighty. And before we get started, I did want to remind you folks, if you could please give us a subscribe on YouTube at the Panel Bros, that would be great. We look forward to seeing those subscriptions because it will help our reach. So thank you so much for that. Alrighty, so we open up after, well, we see young Bruce and young Rachel. They're playing around, and eventually we shift over to adult Bruce Wayne. And the first time we see adult Bruce Wayne, he is in prison.
Yes.
And we just get right into it here. You know, he starts a fight with one of the inmates starts a fight with him. He fights back, and then he beats up this big group of guys. And you know, the inmate says to him, "You are in hell, little man, and I am the devil." And Bruce looks at him and says, "You're not the devil. You're practice."
Bro, that again, it's another testament, because there's so many good lines and writing in this movie, and I just thought that was such a good line. He goes, "You're not the devil, you're practice," and I was like, "Oh, it's so Bruce. I love it."
Yeah, and so he beats him up. He beats everybody else up, and then eventually the guards come and grab him, and they go to take him away. And it says, "What are you doing? This is for protection. I don't need protection. Protection for them."
And then they cut, and you see all of them on the ground, just holding limbs and beat up. And I was like, and this will be the first of many. This will be the first of many. We'll talk about it. There is great humor in this film.
Absolutely,
there's a lot of great humor, and that moment right there was pretty darn funny, man. Like, he's like, I don't need protection. He goes, protection for them. And you realize that Bruce just laid out maybe 6 to 8 guys by himself.
Absolutely. So we then get introduced to Ducard of the League of Shadows, as it's known. Let's get a little sweaty here. They're also known as the League of Assassins in the comic books. League of Assassins or the League of Shadows. Nolan decided to go with the League of Shadows for his movies. And he meets him. He blows his cover, because obviously Bruce Wayne is undercover here. And you know, he tries to find out from him what he's seeking and such. And, well, come find us. You know, pick a flower at the base of the mountain, climb all the way to the top of the mountain, and you will find us, and we will help you, and help you seek what you find, so to speak. So we see him traveling, like we're in it now. Like, we just jump right into it, you know? And he climbs the mountain. You know, he got to the flower, he climbs the mountain, takes him days to get there. And he's barely, you know, on his, you know, he can barely stand, as he says. And it's like, your training begins now. It's like, I can barely stand. And it's like, that does not wait. Do you
Yep,
think
and he just Sparta kicks him right in the chest.
Yeah.
And he's like, "Death doesn't wait, my man." And I was like, "Yeah, that's a valid point."
Yeah, it's great. And Ducard is just ruthless, and then he catches the foot, and it's like, oh,
Yeah.
he can fight. And I love the way this scene went because he called out each style as he was fighting him. He just
Mhm.
looks at him, and Bruce takes a stand. He goes, "Oh, tiger," blocks it, and then does something else. Jujitsu blocks it, and then he does something else. He goes panther, and he counters every single time. He's like, whatever style you think you can do, we have mastered it.
Yep.
And it was such a great moment from Ducard and the League of Shadows there.
It's so good because Bruce has done everything in his power to try to prepare himself to be the best fighter, and doing everything he felt he had to do, and like in that one moment, he's letting him know, just like you said, everything that you can do, man, we've already mastered it. So Bruce
Right.
realized at that moment there's still so much more for him to learn.
Absolutely. And obviously, we meet the head of the League of Shadows. Well, in the movie anyway, we meet the head of the League of Shadows, Ra's al Ghul, and
Mhm.
I'm going to use that pronunciation because that's the pronunciation that Nolan went with. Um, if you're a fan of the Batman the Animated Series, they went with a different pronunciation, Ra's al Ghul. And
Raish.
yeah, let's get we're getting sweaty again.
Yeah,
It's Ra's
Raish.
al Ghul in a lot of the video games and animated. It's always been Raish, but for whatever reason, Nolan went with Ross. We're gonna go with Ross. So we meet him, but Ducard is just the head guy. He's running everything
Yep.
and such. So great introduction. And we're gonna shift over here. We're already in the Nolan situation here, where he's jumping back and forth between timelines and such. And we get a flashback. We see young Bruce Wayne fall down a well. He's swarmed with a bunch of bats, and that's where he first develops a fear of bats. So
Yep.
once again, pulled directly from the comic books, Bruce Wayne falling down and getting swarmed with bats and such. His his father, Thomas Wayne, comes in the picture. They pull him out of the well, and they're taking him back to the house, with Alfred, and he says the ominous line that we hear a couple times again, and why do we fall, Bruce? So we can learn to pick ourselves up. Just a nice
Yeah.
statement of hope there. We move forward here to the opera, the infamous
Yeah.
night that we lose the Waynes, basically.
Yeah.
So,
Yes,
so
we do.
spoiler alert, folks. Bruce
Spoiler alert.
Bruce Wayne's parents die.
Yes. Yes. Pearls everywhere, gunshots, everything. It's all there.
Yeah, absolutely. So it's interesting how Nolan showed this. They're watching the play, and within the play there are bats, and
Yes.
Bruce is scared of bats. So they make this be the reason Bruce has to leave. Thomas notices, but Martha Wayne doesn't notice, and he just makes up an excuse. I think it's time for us to go. He doesn't
Yeah.
even call his own son out. He's just
Nope.
trying to protect his son, just so loving towards his son. It's great.
Yeah, because she even asked. She asked Bruce, "What's wrong?" And he goes, "Oh no, it's me. I needed some air." And he looks at Bruce. He's like, "Right," and he gives him a nice little wink, kind of like, "Hey,
Exactly.
don't worry about it." And like,
Yeah.
I wanted to say that editing in this sequence when they're at the play, it's done in a way that it's almost shot like a horror movie. Like it's very quick
Yeah.
glimpses. It's almost like someone who suffers PTSD. It's very quick and startling, very quick and startling, very quick and startling. And there's a lot of editing like that throughout the movie that makes it feel like a horror movie, and we'll talk about that. But I appreciate it in that moment because it's more than just him seeing, like, as we know, actors, excuse
Correct.
me, playing bats, but to him it's this jarring, scary image, and he's like, "All right, we got to get out of here." And his dad was super cool about it, and I appreciated that.
Yeah. Absolutely. So outside, we get introduced to Joe Chill. So up
Yep.
until now, we haven't seen Joe Chill in live action. This is the first time we're seeing the person that killed Bruce Wayne's parents. This is the lore. We're just,
Yes.
we're just going in here, and Thomas Wayne is just being very calm and collected here.
Yeah.
He's saying it's fine. Drops the wallet. It's fine.
Yeah.
I
It's
want to
cool.
give it
It's
to
fine.
you.
Yep.
But then he said, I want the jewelry too. And he goes to grab, and then that's when Thomas jumps in the way. He gets shot. Martha Wayne is screaming. Joe Chill shoots her too, goes to grab the pearls, and we see the infamous line, not line, but scene that we see time and time again, the pearls going everywhere.
Yep.
And Unfortunately, young Bruce is, he's there just, dead parents now, and he doesn't
Yep.
know what to do. And gets transported to the Gotham City Police Department. And who's there to help him? Commissioner Gordon. Just wraps his arms around him, puts a coat up on him, and says it's going to be fine. And
he's not commissioner yet, right?
He's not.
He's not, right?
He's
Yeah,
not
yeah,
Commissioner
okay.
Gordon. Yeah, he's say sergeant, I want to say.
Yeah.
It's either no, I can't tell if I don't know. It's a rank of policeman. It was either detective or sergeant. So definitely not commissioner, not yet anyway. Absolutely.
Not yet.
Thank you for the catch. So we just get a showcase of just the morning that young Bruce is going through here. Gets back to the house, post funeral, and Alfred is just offering him to make him supper, and I miss them too. And this is when we get introduced to Alfred as almost like his father figure.
Yeah.
What will become of the relationship between him and Alfred. So we have another time shift here. And it says it's been 14 years since his parents died. We find out that Joe Chill is about to be up for parole.
Mm-hmm.
And that's because while locked up, he's going to testify against Carmine Falcone of the Mafia. He's a boss. And Bruce thinks he's going to get a gun and shoot Joe Chill and get revenge for him killing his parents.
Yeah.
And when he goes to do it, because Chill is leaving the courtroom, somebody else, one of Falcone's people, says, "Hey, Carmine Falcone says hi." Bang.
Bam. Right there, right in the chest.
So Bruce is robbed of his revenge.
Yeah. And he says something very interesting, because someone says, "Bruce, let's go. You don't have to see this." And he goes, "No, I think I do." And he has to see it. It was taken from him, but he goes, "No, I think I do." And it shows how much vengeance was in his heart, how much hatred he had for this man for taking his parents, that in that moment, even when the deed was done, it wasn't enough. He wanted to stand there and watch and visual and just see it come to an end, just see it come to a close. Because like you said, he was he was robbed of that moment.
Correct. And that theme of vengeance continues throughout the movie. Vengeance versus justice, but vengeance especially, because what's the infamous Batman line? "I am vengeance."
I am vengeance.
I'm the knight. I am the knight. I am Batman. Let's go. Shout out to Kevin Conroy. May he rest in peace. So his friend Rachel Doss is there. She's grown up now. And they're driving around. And she takes him to where Carmine Falcone is.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where Bruce reveals that he was planning on shooting Joe Chill.
Yeah.
And in what I'd like to think is an improvised moment, Rachel Doss does not slap Bruce once. She slaps him twice.
Twice, bro. She was not happy.
So do you think Katie Holmes went a little off script there? Because I don't know if 2 slaps were in the script.
I don't know. It's an odd thing, right? Because you think one slap proves the point. It's like, bam, one slap. Or I wonder if there's only one slap per take, and Nolan made an editing choice and was like, you know what, get a second slap in there. It's even better, because it's almost like she hits him and she goes, "Oh my God, how dare you?" No, seriously, how dare you? And she hits him again. And it's just, and then she goes into that whole spiel of like, what is revenge versus justice and whatnot. And they had that whole conversation.
Yeah, it's a great conversation. I really like it because we're developing that bond between Bruce and Rachel. These are childhood friends that, they've stayed in touch all these years, and now, they're talking, and they say sometimes they're the same thing: vengeance and justice.
It's a good conversation, because there's a point when I'm watching it, especially because I watched it to prepare for this again, in the car, where she's like, there's a difference, and she brings up the judicial system,
right?
And he has a very good point, because he says the judicial system is broken, And he has a very, very valid point by saying it, because it is broken, and she understands that, because everything just happened to Joe Chill because the judge was bought off, which is why the trial was public,
Right.
because they wanted this to get out so that way he could be taken out. Oh, you're gonna go after Falcone? Okay, we're gonna make this trial public. We want people to see who you are, people to know who you are, and we're gonna send somebody to come get you. And like, so it is broken, but she still has that I
Right.
don't
And
know what the word is, but she's still holding on to that, like, no, justice
well,
is really.
what's making this difficult is she's a lawyer.
Yeah.
And she's agreeing to all this,
Yep.
and she's saying, "Oh, he said to her, your boss is letting him go."
Yep.
What is she gonna say to that? Yeah, well, he's paroled, and well, yeah, we know why he's letting him go, but that man killed my parents, and
Exactly.
you're okay with him being a free man,
Exactly. It's a
you know?
very great conversation, because I can see aspects of both of them being right in their own
Right.
mind. And I was sliding with Bruce a little bit. Like, I was like, I don't know, Rachel. I mean, I don't know. I mean, yes, killing him was not the right thing to do, but I understand his frustration with you and
Correct.
everybody right now. I get it.
Yeah, so, um, obviously she goes in on him, she slaps him twice, and she says, "Your father would be ashamed of you." Of course, something really
Yeah,
hurtful because she's mad.
that hurt, man. Like,
Yeah,
I'm watching it and I was like, because again, she's probably the closest thing to a best friend that he's ever known.
correct.
And for her to say that, like, your father would be ashamed of you, she knew what she was doing. She was like, I'm gonna get this point home to you. And yeah, she drove it in.
Yeah, absolutely. So Bruce goes in, he confronts Falcone, but before he did that, he threw the gun in the river.
Yeah, yeah.
He didn't want to go in armed, and in the Falcone actually says, "Oh, you came in unarmed. I'm insulted." It's just
I'm
like
insulted. Yeah.
it's like, oh well, maybe you should have brought it in. Um, Falcone has a nice speech, tells him that about the power that he has and the fear
Mhm.
that he has over Gotham City. He's like, there's people in the judicial system here right
Yeah.
now, and I could shoot you and no one would bat an eyelash. And he said, that's power.
Yep.
That's to show you how powerful Falcone is. Because now Bruce believes he would be a hunted man for doing this,
Mhm.
he makes the decision to leave.
Yeah.
And he doesn't know what he's going to do. He just makes the decision to leave. So he switches coats with a homeless man, and the homeless man says to him, "Oh, it's a nice coat.
It's a, it's a nice coat. It's a
Yeah,
nice
it's a
coat.
nice coat." It's like, well, don't let anybody see you in it. They're gonna come looking for me.
Yeah.
So we're only mentioning this now because there's a callback to this later on.
Yes,
So,
there is.
but it's a nice moment though. Um, it says here Bruce left for 7 years,
Yeah.
and during the 7 years, that's where we find out. That's how he gets to the place where he meets Ducard.
Mhm.
And this is where Bruce would begin his training to eventually become Batman. We
Yeah.
find out.
One of my favorite things about those 7 years is he becomes a criminal to learn about the criminal
Right.
activity and how criminal thinks, but he's stealing things that technically are his, because 'cause they're for
Yeah.
Wayne. So, it's because I remember the first time watching it, and he's like, "Oh, I became a criminal to kinda figure out how they think, feel the rush of the thing," and I'm like, "Oh, Bruce became a criminal? That's kinda weird," and then it's like, "Oh, he's stealing Wayne stuff." I was like,
Yeah.
"That is a great way out." I like that.
Yeah.
I
He's
like
stealing
that.
his own stuff. He's not really doing it.
Yeah, yeah, I like
And
that.
there's a line, I'm no criminal. He's like, well, tell that to the guy on these boxes. And you see his name, his family name
Yeah,
on it.
yes, yes.
So it's good stuff here. We get a bunch of training montages, just incredible footage here of see, Bruce was already a skilled fighter, but he
Mhm.
needs to learn techniques,
Yeah,
techniques like, hiding, as far as he needs to up his agility to get
yeah,
out of situations, like a lot of different things to become Batman. He can't just be
yeah,
somebody that can fight. And under the tutelage of Ducard, he's learning these things and all the other um, members of the League of Shadows. He's learning these things. And Bruce is just taking everything in. We have one final test, and in that final test, uh, we see we see the bats again, and
mhm,
Ducard gets the upper hand, but eventually Bruce overcomes that, and he is able to defeat Ducard So they have a final test, so to speak, after this, and they bring a prisoner forward, and it's like, what's this for? And it's like, you need to execute him. You know, he's a thief, and he eventually became a murderer. And he says this man needs to stand trial. I'm no executioner. Why would you, why would you have me do this? And they say to him, this is how we know you're going to be with us. And once we know you're with us, we are going to take down Gotham City, because that city that let you down has let many people down.
Yep.
And with the resources that you can create for us, coming from the wealthiest family in Gotham City, and possibly, one of the wealthiest families in the world, the League of Shadows can take over.
Yeah.
And so Bruce is sitting there, he's listening to everything, and he's like, okay. And obviously he tricks them. I'm not going to do that. I'm not trying to kill somebody. So the whole place burns down. He gets in a fight with Ross, and he ends up killing Ross. And it's like, oh no, one of the biggest villains in Batman's lore. Yeah.
Again, you're kind of like, what?
Yeah. Because we're watching this, just like, Ghul's like one of the biggest Batman villains ever. And you just killed him in a random fight. It's like, okay.
I'm like, he's probably got maybe less than 10 minutes of actual screen time. And I'm like, and he's dead. And it's one of those moments of like, what are you planning here, Nolan?
Exactly. And it's Ken Watanabe, who's been getting a lot of attention at this point. He was in The Last Samurai. He's been in many movies since, but it wasn't like he used like a nobody. He was up and coming here in the States, so.
And Nolan's used him more than once. So it's
Absolutely.
like, okay.
And but he decides to save Ducard, because in the moment of trying to save Ducard from the burning building, he jumps to save him because he's going to fall off the side of the cliff.
Mm-hmm.
And the person standing there says, I'll let him know that you saved his life, so now that all this has happened, now Bruce is, well, I guess I have to go back home now.
Yep, I got to go back to Gotham.
Yeah, time to go back home. So if we could talk about that decision there, this is where we first start getting that, I don't want to say that rule, because Nolan kind of bends that no killing rule with Batman in his movies, but it's just kind of like that sense of justice from Batman, where he says, that's the one thing I won't do. And, Ducard says to him, compassion is a weakness. Your enemies will not share that same compassion. And Bruce makes it a point to say, yeah, but that's what separates us from them. It's like, we have to have that. We can't be willing to get down to their level. And, I just thought that was really cool that they took a minute to explain that to us.
Yeah, it was really good, because especially within the context of this movie, it also calls back to the conversation between him and Rachel. Like he listened to her, he took her words to heart and whatnot, and realized, okay, that's not the way to go about things. And when presented with the opportunity to execute not just a thief, as you mentioned, he was a murderer. Like he was a thief who became a murderer.
Correct.
Something, the probably one of the worst things you could do. And even at that point, Bruce is like, I'm not an executioner. I'm not going to execute this man. This man should stand trial.
Right.
He's putting faith back in the system. He's like, no, he should face trial for his crimes. And Ducard is pleading, man. Like, he's pleading with Bruce, like, Bruce, please. Like, you have to do this. Like, he wants so badly for him to just embrace this, so that way they can combine forces, go to Gotham and do what they need to do. And Bruce is not about it. And like you said, I'm glad that they made it a point, because it really establishes that rule. And as you mentioned, Nolan will bend it a bit throughout this trilogy. But it's good to know that when presented with the choice, if Bruce can choose not to, he will absolutely choose not to.
Right.
And it was presented right there.
Right. And it's been 7 years. So it wasn't like, to us, it was overnight. But in movie 7 time, 7 years of training and forming relationships with Ducard and everybody there, so it wasn't like it was an easy decision for Bruce to turn on everybody and come back,
It's like, no.
We shift to another scene where we meet Jonathan Crane.
Oh, yeah.
And he's testifying on behalf of Victor Zsasz. So we're getting cameos from the Batman universe from Nolan. And
I love it, because you can see the the scars on Victor Sass's neck and whatnot. You can
Right.
see it. So it's right away, even if they didn't say, like, "Oh, that's Victor Sass."
Yeah, it's great. Get a little sweaty here. He eventually goes on um, to be a criminal known for making a slash in his
Mhm.
skin for each person that he kills.
Yep.
So we got that there, and obviously, due to the marketing, we knew that Crane's going to be in the movie for some time now. But nice way to introduce him there. We then shift to Bruce discovering the cave, which would
Mhm.
eventually become known as the Batcave, and
Oh, yeah.
he gets swarmed by bats again. This is the
Mhm.
third time in the movie where he swarmed. He swarmed as a kid. He swarmed as in the training, and with the League of Shadows, and then he swarmed again here. But instead of running away, what does he do, Ricardo?
He just
Stands.
stands there and embraces it, and it's
Yeah,
like he breathes it in, and he just becomes, like, one with the bats and, like, very comfortable, and he just goes, "No, this is I'm gonna embrace my fear."
right. And in a way, it wasn't like it's like this. I'm not going to stop being afraid. I'm just going to embrace my fear
Mhm.
in
Yep.
order to use it on
Yes.
my enemies. And it's such a great storyline there as far as
It's
using
so
his
good.
fear.
It's so good. Yeah, 'cause like you said, and as the movie goes on, you'll see that he still has that fear, but as you mentioned, it's about embracing it and using it, and I thought that was really cool.
Absolutely. So mixed in with this, we get to see Bruce. He's reintroducing himself back to Gotham because he's been
Mhm.
gone for 7 years.
Yeah.
Everybody thinks he's dead. He needs to. He wants to take interest in his family's company, Wayne Enterprises. He doesn't want to take over, so he comes in and says, "Well, I want to be part of the applied science, the R&D
Yeah.
department, research and development." And who runs that? Lucius Fox. Okay, and the person running things, William Earl's like, okay, fine. I thought it was Bruce Wayne. You're supposed to be dead. Sorry to disappoint.
Sorry to
Just
disappoint. Sorry to disappoint. Yeah, alright, we'll talk about it, we'll talk about it.
yeah, yeah, definitely. And so Lucius starts helping him, and he's going into all the different things that are going to help him become Batman. Creating the suit, the Batmobile, the tumbler. It's a really cool moments that we have there. And we have the line he says, "Does it come in black?"
Does it
Just
come in black?
for the
There's
tumbler.
there's a lot of great conversation
Yeah,
between him and Fox down there, and I love that Fox right away, because Bruce was like, "Hey, it'd be, great if we can keep this between us," and Fox like, "Listen, in my opinion, all this stuff is yours anyway." So there's already that relationship between Fox and Bruce of like, "Hey, this is all yours. Whatever you
right,
want, you got it." And obviously there's a little back and forth on question like, "Oh, what's it for?" And he's like, "Oh, spelunking." And he's like, "Oh, okay." And
right.
Fox isn't dumb, you know what I mean? Like he says it, he goes, "Listen, you don't have to tell me certain things, so when people ask me, I don't have to lie. But don't think of me as an idiot." And then my one of my favorite lines, he goes, "Fair enough." And then he looks over and he sees the tumbler. He goes, "What's that?" And Fox just goes, he goes, "Oh, the tumbler? Oh, you wouldn't be interested in that." And it's
Yeah,
like there's this great smile because he's like, "Yeah, you're gonna like this." But yeah, I like this whole spot, this whole location for everything because it seems like the one area that Bruce chose is the one area that's kind of like the dead end, right? Like
right,
Fox says, he goes, he stuck me down here and it's kind of the dead end. So nobody's really paying attention down here. Nobody's really worried. We got a bunch of stuff that the military didn't want to pay for, whatnot. It was too expensive, whatever have you. But right away, we're learning, like, oh man, like he's gonna get all his arsenal from right here.
right.
We're gonna see these great prototypes, which I'm not gonna lie, it was so cool seeing everything as a prototype. Even seeing the suit and before like he does everything he does to it, seeing the belt, seeing the grappling guns, and seeing how they originally look and how they're going to evolve as the movie continues.
Absolutely. I enjoyed that too because we're seeing different things. We're seeing the Kevlar. There's that memory, the
Yeah.
material that to use for gliding.
Yep.
We have the tumbler that obviously would become the Batmobile eventually. We're not getting shown Batman just yet. We're just getting
Mm-mm.
breadcrumbs along the way, and it's
Yep.
just the anticipation of like we know where this is headed. But
Yes.
it's really cool. Even the cowl. There was two different parts: the ears and
Yeah.
the cowl in itself. He had to make that, and the process of ordering, what is it, 10,000 of them.
It was 10,000 units of it. And again, he does another great thing, goes, "Well, at least we'll have spares." You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Like, there's a lot of good humor in it.
Yeah, exactly, and then, you see Alfred doing a test on it, and it breaks it apart. He says, "Well, we need to order some more," and it's like, "Well, they're giving us a discount." Well, good to know.
Good to know. You know what I mean? I would try not landing on your head. It's like, yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
it's
it's
so good.
great.
It's so good.
So, we eventually get this meeting here. Well, it's in the shadows. Bruce is
Yeah.
gonna he's out. He's masked up a little bit. He's not in the Batman suit, not just yet, but he's gonna try going out and test his stealth abilities.
Yeah.
And he holds a stapler to the back of Gordon's head to mimic a gun. And you know, uh, we need to take down Falcone. It's like, I can't do it. The whole place is corrupt. He's like, you're not corrupt. And
Yeah.
he drops the line. What does he say, Ricardo?
Because Gordon asks, he goes, are you just one person? Well, just one person? Are you just one
Yeah.
man? Because Gordon has no idea who else is in the room. But right
Right.
now he only feels this in the back of his head and he hears one voice and he goes, "You're just one man." And Bruce, he says this great line. I texted you as soon as I heard it. And he just says, "And now we're two." And I
Yeah.
was like, ah, that's such a good line. He's
It's great.
acknowledging that there's two personas, and I love it.
Yeah. And obviously, Bruce has to flee because uh, this is kind of like, you're really not supposed to do this,
No,
So,
not at
break
all.
into the police department, under false pretenses, and so, who is that? Just some nut, it's like, oh,
Just some nut. And hey, Bruce has a rough time getting out of this one because he
yeah,
doesn't have a cape yet.
nope,
He just has the prototype suit and a ski mask. And I remember he leaps and
yeah,
there's just nothing to help him and he's just eating it. And I was like, oh, that's so
yeah,
painful. But again, I love this aspect because again, we're seeing him evolve and him grow. And I thought it's so cool every time we see him get just a little bit more tech, a little bit more gadgets and whatnot to really complete his arsenal.
absolutely. So, in the Batcave, we get a conversation between Bruce and Alfred, and eventually they start talking about what he's going to become. And it's, he doesn't say the name Batman just yet, but he says, I'm going to model this costume and this persona after bats.
Yeah.
And Alfred says, why? It's because they terrify me. So
Yeah.
we get confirmation that it's not that Bruce necessarily overcame his fear, it's he's embraced his fear and he's going to
Hmm.
use that fear against criminals and against his enemies here.
Yep.
It takes a little over an hour in the movie before we eventually meet Batman. And I
Yeah.
and it's Nolan took his time
Yes.
and it was really cool here. And before we get into that, what an introduction. They're over here with the drug shipments and he's trying to break up the drug shipments and taking out guys one at a time. And where are you here?
Here. This bro,
Yeah.
this whole sequence is a horror movie.
Yeah.
It is the first sequence in the movie where I felt like I saw this in theaters. I didn't know what we were gonna get, but this whole sequence, I remember being in the theaters and going for the first time, after watching so many live action Batman films, the animated series, for the first time, I could understand the fear that someone would have in this scenario. The fear, because again, growing up, I just viewed Batman as cool, right? He's BA, like he beats up all the bad guys. But this was one of the first times where I could understand from, from a bad guy's perspective, how scary the Batman could be,
Yeah.
because you're seeing just like legit shadows moving. You don't really know where it's coming from, and you hear like just a slight sound of the cape and you're being ruffled in the air, and you're like, what is this? And you never really see, and he's taking guys out and he's pulling them into the darkness, and you're like, what? And like you mentioned, you have the one guy who's getting really frustrated and he's just opening gunfire, and he's like, where are you? And just he backs up here, and it's just
Yeah.
oh, and he screams and he grabs. I'm like, dude, this is great.
Yeah. It is great. And meanwhile, we keep cutting to Falcone in the car,
Hmm.
and he's terrified because he's hearing guys bullets. He's hearing
Yep.
bullets, but he's still hearing them screaming, and Batman's taking them out, and then it just gets quiet.
Yeah.
And he says, "What are you?" And then without missing a beat, Batman grabs him, pulls him up, and he says the infamous line, "I'm Batman." A nice,
It's
a
it's
nice
so good.
throwback to Burton's Batman movie, with
It's so
Keaton.
good. It's so good.
Uh,
He says it, and he gives him a nice headbutt.
yep. And then he looks at, and then all of a sudden we see the homeless guy.
The homeless guy.
Nice coat.
Yep, and he takes off, and it's so good. And again, it's a moment. It's humorous. It doesn't undercut the tension because the way the scene is
Yeah.
done, you have the horror aspect, and you got like this very chaotic energy with the fight going on. And then he takes out Falcone, and when he says "I'm Batman," you hear like the score swell. Like it's supposed to be a triumphant return, a triumphant moment. He's acknowledged who he is. He has accepted the persona. He's like, I'm Batman. And it's like, all right, and we get that music, and he does it. The bad guy's taken out. It's a victory.
Yeah.
And in that moment, he sees it, he just nice coat, and he just takes off. And I
Yeah.
don't know why. It's so cool. It's so
A fun moment.
small,
And
but it's so cool.
and realistically speaking, what are the odds that after 7 years of being away, he would still see that guy? But Nolan said, you know what, we're just gonna have
Who
something fun here.
cares?
We're just gonna have,
Exactly.
he's
It's
still wearing
fun.
the same coat that Bruce gave him.
Yep.
It's a great line. I get a chuckle every time when I
Yeah,
see it.
it's cool because the last time we see that homeless man is the moment Bruce decides to leave.
Right.
And the next time we see him is the moment Bruce has accepted his identity back in Gotham. And it's cool. It's a cool parallel. I like it.
Yeah. So this isn't just for fun here. Bruce ties up Falcone,
Mhm.
and he's helping two people here because Rachel, she's now the Gotham District Assistant District Attorney. She's not
Yeah.
just a lawyer. She's right under the DA. And Rachel is going to work with Jim Gordon, and he's a sergeant. I saw
Yeah.
that here. So, because Gordon's the only one that has the guts to take down Falcone. He's like, well, we don't have enough evidence. All we see is guys here. We don't have
Yeah.
Falcone. It's like, oh, we have Falcone. He's right
Yeah.
here.
He's over there on the light.
Nice little homage there. It's tied up to like the bat signal, just
It,
in the sky.
again, another moment where I was in the theater and I kind of did like a slow clap, like, oh wow,
Yeah.
like using him on the big storm light that creates like a very, very, very rough version of the bat signal. And I remember just being like, wow, okay,
Yep.
Nolan, I see you.
Yeah.
It was good. It was good.
Absolutely. So we get a little break here from the action. We're seeing Bruce trying to balance his life as Bruce Wayne
Mhm.
and the billionaire playboy persona. So
Yes.
they go to the hotel, and he's having a meeting with I think Earl. Yeah, Earl. And he's having a meeting with everybody. They're talking. He's not taking any of this seriously.
Nope.
He has his 2 dates. They go, they jump in the water. And the guy comes by, "Sir, that's not for swimming, and I'm gonna have to ask you to leave." Yeah, I'm buying this hotel, and he just
I'm
puts
gonna
the
buy it.
he puts the check right in. Like, well, who does that?
We're gonna make some new rules around the pool area. And I was like, man, like he's got the playboy thing down.
Right.
It's one of my favorite things about Bruce Nolan's interpretation of Bruce Wayne is that the moment Bruce realizes he's going to be back in the public eye, he adopts that persona, that mask. And it was so cool because he's a completely different person. Like I would hate this Bruce Wayne, you know what I
Right.
mean? Like I'm like, oh, he's so obnoxious, but it's done so well and with purpose.
Absolutely. This is a great scene because we get to see the billionaire playboy. We get to see, just this different side of Bruce, but we also get to see the real Bruce for a
Yes,
split
we
second
do.
here. Typically we only get to see the real Bruce um when he's home with Alfred and such,
Yeah.
So, Rachel, he bumps into her. It's like, "Oh, you're back." She didn't know he was back yet. And she saw him, and uh, he's soaking wet because he jumped into the hotel
Yeah.
pool with the
Yeah.
models, and they're like, "Oh, we have some more hotels that we need you to buy. Let's go. We're having some fun tonight." And you know, Rachel, this isn't me.
Yeah,
This isn't me. And she drops the line, it's not who you are underneath, it's what you do that defines you.
yeah. And again, this was a moment where I was telling you earlier where I was like, there's almost like 3 Bruce Waynes in this movie
Right.
because you have Bruce the Playboy, and then you have the Batman, and then there's this one with Rachel
Right.
that, and it's interesting because he lets it slip. And even though he's out in public, nobody's really paying attention to them at this moment. So he lets it slip, and like he's talking to her. He's like, "Hey, like, yeah, I'm back and whatnot." And I love that he tells her, he goes, "Hey, like, like this isn't me. Like, there's something underneath." And then she hits him with that line, which we will play with throughout the movie.
Right. So Falcone's in prison, and he meets Dr. Crane, Dr. Jonathan
Mhm.
Crane, but Crane's been working for the mafia. So he's, just tell them what you need to tell them so I can get back out on the street. We'll take a plea bargain, plead insanity, all that good stuff. And, you know, he says, well, he doesn't really say it. We can't really fake that. So Crane goes ahead and almost kind of turns on Falcone and puts on his Scarecrow mask. Haha, we get a reveal. This is the Scarecrow, for those that don't know the comic books. And he sprays Falcone with the fear toxin.
Yeah.
And Falcone loses his mind.
Yes, he does.
And it's the first time we see the fear toxin sequence, which will happen time and time again during this movie. And they end up getting him transferred to Arkham Asylum, but he gets his plea bargain now
Yep.
because of this. And it's not revealed why he would turn on the mafia crime boss, because they're kind of working together, with the
Yeah.
drug shipments, and he's helping Falcone's helping Crane. Why would you do this? And we find out eventually, but
It's interesting because I think Falcone, I think he pushed his luck, man, because he even says it. He goes, "Listen, I know you guys are moving some heavy stuff through here. I've been helping you guys out." And he goes, "I want in." And Crane is like, "Well, I already know what he'll say. He'll just tell me to kill you." Like, it's already
right,
like Falcone's trying to like push his weight a little bit, and he goes, "No, you couldn't do that. You couldn't do that. Even as powerful as your guy is,
right,
like I in Gotham, you can't touch me." And Crane just like,
right.
"Okay,
Yeah.
okay.
So
You want to see my mask? You want to see my mask?" And I was like,
right.
"Oh boy."
Yeah. So I stand corrected. Like, he had a good reason to do it. It's just you didn't think he would do it right then and there.
No, no,
So
yeah, like, I Falcone, he it was so funny because he like, as soon as Crane walks in, he goes, "Plead insanity, da, da, da." He does all that. He goes like, "Come on, what do
right,
we gotta do to get me out of here?" And then he's talking, and then Falcone has to get greedy, and he goes, "Hey, I want in.
right,
I want in. I want in." And he's just like, he'll just tell me to kill you." And he's like, nah." And then he's like, "Okay." And then this again, this is another sequence where there's a lot of horror sprinkled throughout this movie, but I love the fear toxin.
yeah,
I love it. It was funny because I remember watching the trailers for this movie, and I had no idea that Crane was in it. I had no idea that quote unquote Scarecrow was in it. I had
right,
no idea. So seeing it was such a pleasant surprise. So when he goes, "When you want to see my mask," I was like, "Oh, we're gonna do it? Are we doing
yeah.
it?" And he pulls it out, and I'm like, he goes, "Oh, it's not really scary now, but man, it really freaks a lot of other guys out." And he does the whole fear talks, and I was like, "Oh, I can't wait to see what else we do with that in this movie."
Yeah, absolutely. We knew Crane was going to be in the movie, but we didn't know Scarecrow was going to be in the movie.
Yeah,
So it was a
exactly.
nice,
Because I'm like, "Are we doing
surprise.
it?"
We get our first official Batman interrogation scene
Oh,
with Flass of the Gotham City Police Department, Mark Boone Jr.
yes.
And and it's funny what happens right beforehand. He steals money from one of the street vendors, and the street
Mhm.
vendor can't do anything because that's
No.
the corrupt cops.
Yep.
I got a family to feed. What, they don't like falafel?
Don't like
And
falafel?
so he's eating the falafel, and with the food still in his beard,
Yep.
Batman strings him up, and he keeps dropping him to get information out of him. It's terrifying,
It's
and
so good.
Flash talks about the cops, and he's like, "Do I look like a cop? I
It is
swear to God, I'm telling the truth. Swear to me." You know,
it's so
like,
good. It is probably up to that point the hardest Batman has ever been in terms of interrogating someone, and
Right.
like his voice, like he had I'm not even gonna attempt it. I will blow this mic out. You know what I mean? Like he is just yelling and scary and vicious. And again, it's another moment. I remember every time Nolan did a really good job of delivering moments that would remind you why people would be scared of him.
Right.
And the idea of him being dragged 13 stories up, 13 stories down, 13 stories up, being held, he thinks he's gonna die. He has
Right.
no idea who this Batman is. And again, like when he says, "Do I look like a cop?" Like it's so aggressive. He drops him.
Yeah.
Oh, I swear to God, and swear to me. And I'm like, oh my
It's great.
God. Like it's so good. The rain is falling,
Yeah.
thunder, like
Yeah.
just
Yeah. And
again,
he's got
chef's
this
kiss.
big beard. He's got food in his beard. Like this
Yep.
guy's like,
Yep.
no, you're done, dude.
Yeah,
So
yeah. It's so good.
it's great. While continuing his investigation, he comes across Crane again and the goons, and Crane manages to spray Batman with the fear toxin,
Yep.
and um, he's set on fire. He manages to escape, but Alfred is the one that saves him. So we get another shot we get another fear toxin shot, and it's even
Yep.
more grotesque than before. We see like bugs and maggots coming out of the mask and
Yeah, and
such.
bats came out of his mouth, right? Like, were there
Bats,
bats too? Like,
yeah,
you see
bats,
everything, and like, it's not just that. Like, because Batman and Bruce already has that pre-existing fear. It's like he's also getting glimpses of when he was a kid surrounded by bats. He's getting all that at once, and
right?
you see him swinging and throwing, and like it's such good acting from Bale, because there's a moment when Bale is in the cowl, he's completely checked into Batman. Like you can see it in his eyes and everything. But in this moment, that intensity's gone. And it's legitimate fear. Like he's like, wait, what's happening?
Right. He's seeing
And
his parents, something that he's
yes, it's
haunted by.
there's so much happening. And like when you look at Crane, obviously he's not a big guy.
Right.
And you look at Bale's a bear, and he's got all the martial arts skills to beat anybody up. But in that moment, because of of the toxin, that's all it took. And he delivers it's such a 90s line, something you would probably hear like Arnold Schwarzenegger say in a movie. But Crane takes out the lighter and he goes, "My diagnosis, you need to lighten up." And he
It's
throws the
great.
lighter and puts him on fire. And I was like, guys, again, the writing, good job.
Yeah,
It's so good.
I took that line down actually. He says well, he's already in Batman's already feeling the fear toxin.
Yeah,
So you're hearing
yeah,
the grotesque voice coming out of Crane. Having trouble? Take a seat. Have a drink, and he pours alcohol on him, or
yep.
or whatever he pours on him. And you look like a man who takes himself too seriously. Do you want my opinion? You need to lighten
You
up.
need
And
to
it's just,
lighten up.
it's like very ridiculous, but
I love it. I love it.
in my opinion, I kind of see Crane as the comedic relief in this movie because he's
Yeah,
just
it was so
oh,
funny. Like it
you
was
know,
so funny. Like I'm like again, that's such a 90s
absolutely
tagline. You know what I mean? You need to lighten up, and he throws him on fire. And it's scary, man, because he falls out of the building and he's on fire, and you can see him like in a real panic, and he's terrified. And he gets off the ground, gets on the roof, and he gets on his I don't want to say it's a phone, but he's got a communicator, and
right,
he all he says is Alfred. And like you just feel that fear, and it's like,
right.
oh my God, like this is horrifying.
We shift to Rachel accusing Crane of doing some things. She says, "I know you're up to something, and the drugs. There's something going on here, and you need to. I know you're doing something." So Crane doesn't hide it. He takes her right to what he's doing,
Yep.
and it shows that Crane is introducing the toxin into Gotham's water supply. And when she runs away, uh, Crane sprays her with the fear toxin, and Batman's been keeping an eye on everything, so he has to swoop in to save Rachel. And there's a great line that they actually put in the trailer, and people are saying, "He's here." And, well, Crane says, "He's here." And the people say, "Who?" And he says, "The Batman."
The Batman.
Yeah,
It's
it's
so
great.
good.
Great delivery. Batman eventually gets to Crane and he sprays him with his own fear toxin so he can interrogate him. And then Crane says to him, "I work for Ra's al Ghul." Like, Ra's al Ghul died. What are you talking about? This is the scariest shot of the fear toxin we've seen in the entire movie.
Yes, it is.
It's Batman holding Crane, so it's what Crane sees. And we see this ugly monster of a Batsuit here. It's black makeup, ugly teeth, ooze coming out everywhere. And
Solid black eyes like a shark. Like,
yeah.
it is horrifying.
And it wasn't until years later where a behind the scenes footage was leaked, because we're thinking this was probably makeup, special effects, CGI. This was a practical effect.
Practical, man.
Nolan made a demonic Batman suit for Bale to wear head to toe.
Yeah.
He put makeup on his face, and all they really did was alter his voice a little bit and maybe add some CGI for the ooze. Maybe that's it.
Yeah.
Other than that, Bale's actually in that costume holding Murphy, Cillian Murphy. He's holding him. And
it's why it looks so good, man. That practical, it looks so good and it is scary. And again, seeing it on the big screen, I was like, Nolan is trying to scare the heck out of me and he's doing a good job.
Yeah, absolutely. Batman has to get Rachel back to the Batcave to help her because he had taken the antidote which Lucius made for him. There's another antidote there waiting. So, so Rachel can take it. But to evade the police, he needs to find a distraction. So what does he do? He calls upon a bunch of bats to help him.
What are you doing? And I think he says backup, right? Like, doesn't he say like backup? And I was like, it's so good.
And we get some glimpses of criminals behind bars. We don't know who they are, but they look like they could be a part of his rogues gallery. It's never really explained to us who these people are. They could just be unique looking criminals, but I thought that was really cool as he was going through Arkham Asylum. And, we get an incredible chase sequence. It's really good stuff. And he blows open the wall and he says, "Excuse me."
Good.
Says, "Excuse me," which you said is a line that makes you laugh.
It makes me laugh so much because the wall explodes and there's two inmates on the bed. They're just chilling.
Yeah.
They're just chilling. And the wall blows up and there's a slight reaction. And then a giant bat walks in the room.
Right.
And he comes in, he just goes, "Excuse me." And he keeps walking and they look at him and then they just look at each other. And it's just, there's not a single word spoken out of that. And I find it so funny because I'm wondering, what are they thinking? Did they actually see what they saw? Are they both like, did you see that? It just, I don't know. It's so subtle. It's so quick. Burst through the wall. "Excuse me." It just keeps going. And I was like, dude, Nolan has these little bits of humor in this movie that works so well. So when people say Nolan doesn't have humor, I'm like, are you crazy? There's a lot of great funny stuff in this movie.
Absolutely. It may not be slapstick, but it's
exactly, and that's the difference.
Slapstick is not the only brand of comedy. There's subtle humor too.
That is the difference. It's not slapsticky, it's not corny, it's not undercutting serious scenes. It's like, no, there you go. There's a moment for you.
So we get Rachel back to the Batcave, and he ends up giving her 2 vials, one for herself, and excuse me, she gets the antidote, and he gives her 2 vials, one for Gordon, so he can take the antidote to help, and the other is for mass production. So we can prevent Gotham City from, being infected with this fear toxin. And I didn't really talk about it yet. There's a device that they can use to release it into the atmosphere. It's an emitter that evaporates water on contact, and all they had to do was use that into the water supply, and then that's what would cause the fear toxin to spread throughout Gotham City. So this is a very dire situation here.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, we have Bruce's 30th birthday to worry about. And at the party, Ducard reappears, and we get a twist. We find out that he's the real Ra's al Ghul.
And I remember going,
right.
What?
Right, because at this point, knowing a little bit about the comics, it's oh, you're gonna bring him back? We're
Yeah.
thinking it's just gonna be Scarecrow for the rest of the movie,
Yeah.
and we don't know what the rest of the movie is gonna be. But at this point, it's like, well, Al Ghul's gone, Ducard's gone. It's just gonna be Scarecrow. It's like, no, I am I am Al Ghul. I'm Ra's al
Yeah.
Ghul, and I'm back now. And it's like, oh man, what an incredible take on the character, you know?
Yeah, it was a great twist. I was like, "Oh, oh," and
Yeah,
he's like, "Hey, man, you gotta be ahead of the game." I was like, "Dang, that was good."
absolutely. We get to find out about the emitter that Al Ghul steals from Wayne Enterprises. He wants to vaporize the water supply, make the fear toxin airborne and such. They get into a little scuffle, sets Wayne Manor on fire, and leaves Bruce to die. Says to, you burned down my home. It's only fair that I do the same thing to you.
Yep.
You should have let me die.
Yup, that
you know
compassion, he's like, "I warned you that compassion would come back to haunt you,
exactly.
man."
So Alfred rescues Bruce, and we get to find out that the emitter is going to be loaded onto a monorail, and as the monorail goes, that's where it's going to evaporate the water as it goes throughout
Mhm.
Gotham. That's the plan. It's because it can't just be in one static spot. And we're in the Narrows now, so they let the emitter off in the Narrows,
Yeah.
and we get a taste of what the rest of Gotham is going to have if they don't stop the monorail. Everyone's going nuts. Everyone's seen a bunch of things due to the fear toxin,
Yep.
and Rachel's the only one. Rachel and Gordon, they're the only two people that have taken the antidote.
Yeah, and, like, the bridge they pulled all the bridges up, so everyone on the island is stuck.
Right.
So, like, there's no one allowed in or out of the island, and you have all those people on that island experiencing the fear toxin one time, and it is a nightmare sequence.
Yeah,
It's just nightmares. It's just nightmares, and you know that it's gonna ensue nothing but violence.
correct. And Batman saves Rachel because the mom's about to turn on her and the little boy, who we've seen a few times throughout the movie.
Mhm.
And he gets them to safety, and she says, "Hey, before you go, you could die. At least tell me who you are." And without thinking about it, Bruce reveals his secret to Rachel.
Yep.
He just says, "It's not who I am underneath, but what I do that defines me." Bruce? He jumps off
Bruce,
the building.
and
You
he
know,
just glides away, and one of the best shots of the movie, he's just gliding, and it's so good.
it's great. I appreciated the fact that they didn't make us wait for this moment. That they didn't make us wait till the end of the movie. That
Okay.
that she needed to know who he was. And I mean, Nolan could have written into the movie that he never tells her. Not until
Yeah,
the not until this
100%.
not until the second movie, or never. There could have been
Mhm.
so many different situations here, because clearly we already have Alfred knows, and then Lucius knows.
And yep,
There's
Fox knows, yep.
nobody else knows, and this is his best from childhood. I have to tell her, so he
Yeah,
lets her know.
'cause she had a valid point. She was like, "Hey, man, you could die.
Right,
At least give me your name." Again, it was a great callback. It was a great callback to the line that she delivered, and, I thought that it was poetic, and she was like, "Wha Bruce?" And
right,
he doesn't have to say another word. She knows, it's like, "Okay."
yeah. So this eventually leads to a final showdown between Ross and Batman
Mhm.
on the monorail, and Ross disables the controls. So Batman's thinking, "Oh man, how am I gonna?" Well, we're thinking, "How are they gonna stop the train now?" Batman has set up a plan already with Gordon in the tumbler to hit the foundations of the monorail,
Yep,
so the train just flies off, so it doesn't, continue spreading and evaporating the water, so the
yep,
fear toxin can hit everybody. And they have a great fight, and you know, Batman says some things to him that he's been saying to him throughout the movie. You never did learn to mind your surroundings. He says it
yep.
back to Ross. And having subdued Ross, he says to Batman, "Are you finally going to do what's necessary? Are you going to kill me like you should have done all those years ago?" And Batman, he says, "I won't kill you, but I don't have to save you." So, he flies out of a window and
Yep, he just glides out the back,
right.
man. I was like, "Oh,
Yeah.
he's
So
leaving."
it's a little bit of a cheat with the no killing rule, but
Yeah,
you know,
it's a gray area. I've heard people have debates
right.
where it's like, "Oh, no, that technically he killed him because he knew he was leaving him to die," and I'm like, "Ah,
Right.
it's kind of a gray
Right.
area, man."
And we don't know how many people died when the building burned down with the League of Assassins. We don't know there,
That is true too. People are like,
and
"Wait, did anybody die?" I was
like
like,
we're getting to like nitpicky territory here, because and then also the chase sequence, there's a couple cars that did rolls,
"Oh,
man.
dude,
Whoever was
that
driving those
Tumblr,
cars, they're not in
bro."
good shape,
That Tumblr was wrecking stuff. So, like,
Yeah.
if you wanna be nitpicky, you could probably find some, you know what I
Maybe,
mean? But again,
but for all intents and
it
purposes, Batman has not willingly killed anybody,
yes, yes,
so
yes,
and we're saying this now because this rule ends up being a thing later on
yes.
in the sequels. So yay, Batman saves the city. We shift back to Bruce and Rachel, and so he's thinking that him and Rachel could finally be together now,
Mhm.
and she's glad that he told her his secret. They share a nice kiss. This is nice and all, but I can't be with you,
Yeah.
because you have Batman, and Batman's going to have to come first. The city's going to have to come first. It's not going to work out with me. And so, unfortunately, they can't be together. The city is hailing Batman as a hero. And we find out that Batman ends up purchasing a controlling stake in Wayne Enterprises. And he fires Earl, replaces him with Fox. Oh, you didn't get the memo?
You didn't get the memo? It's so
Yeah.
good.
Call back to when Earl says it to Fox when he fires him earlier. Says the same
Yep.
exact thing. So I thought that was
He
great.
asked too many questions and he fired him, and he's like, "Oh, didn't you get the memo?"
Right.
That's so good.
Yeah. And Sergeant Gordon is promoted to lieutenant. So
Lieutenant.
he gets promoted, and Batman gets the bat signal. We see it there. And he shines it into the sky because, he wants to talk to Batman. And we have a nice little hint at the sequel and talks about a criminal who keeps leaving behind a calling card. And in one of the best reveals to what's going to come in a sequel, Batman turns the card over and it's a Joker card. My theater erupted when that
Yeah,
happened. I
dude.
remember seeing it in the movie theater. And you know, I'll look into it. Gordon, I never thanked you. Batman, and you'll never have to. The last
Never
line of
have
the
to.
movie. And he flies off.
Music get dun, dun, dun,
Yeah.
dun, dun, dun. First of all, I just wanna point out, in my opinion, I've said it before and I said it again, I would much rather movies do that than post-credit scenes. That stinger at the end is so well done
Yeah.
and gets me so excited. I didn't have to wait through 15 minutes of credits. It was like, no, you have a conversation at the end. And like you, I saw this in the theater. And when when people saw the card, they were like, wait, what? And it turned over and said Joker. You could just feel the excitement
Right.
because it was like, oh my God, we're gonna get Joker. And then obviously everyone was like, who's gonna be Joker? What's the
Right.
storyline gonna be? Like you just start getting so excited, and it was so great. I never said thank you, and you never have to. It's so good.
And by today's standards, that's something that would be safe for a mid-credit scene or an
Yeah.
after-credit scene. But Nolan said, no,
No.
we're gonna end the movie with this to let people know this is what I have planned for the next movie if I
Yep.
get to do it.
It
You know,
was perfect.
if and I can't stress this enough that my theater erupted when that card was shown. So we'd already been enjoying the movie throughout. So to get that at the very end,
Yeah.
perfection.
Again, another chef's kiss moment.
So that's the movie.
Good God. Good God.
You just
Good
got hit
God.
with so many different things when we saw it, and it's an interesting take that when people keep coming back to this, that the task that Nolan had
Yeah.
in rebooting Batman.
Yeah.
We'd seen reboots over the years, but this was the first time a major superhero property was rebooted.
Hmm.
And look at the budget here. The budget was 150 million.
Okay.
It ended up, excuse me, it ended up making 373 million.
Okay.
So definitely a blockbuster hit.
Yep.
And we had a situation where, as you had said previously, Batman was dead in the water.
Yeah. It
Batman
was.
and Batman and Robin, it didn't make as much as they wanted it to. It got panned by the critics, as was Batman Forever, panned by the critics. So Warner Brothers kind of stayed away from the property for so many years. We had so many different projects. Schumacher, they wanted
Mhm.
Schumacher to make a Batman 5, possibly with Scarecrow. That fell through. There were so many people being discussed for that role. Howard Stern, Nicolas Cage. I think Coolio, it was eventually decided Coolio because he was actually in one of the movies. They wanted to do that. That didn't work out. There was going to be a Batman Beyond movie. Darren Aronofsky was going to do that. Just so many projects just kept falling apart time and time and time again. There was going to be a Batman and Superman movie.
Yeah, dude. Like, come on, man. Like,
Yeah,
it was George Clooney has gone on record where he said he apologized at the time for ruining Batman because the franchise was pretty dead in the water, and it seemed like an impossible task
right,
to bring the Batman out. And if anyone was gonna do it, man, it was this new up and comer named Christopher Nolan.
right,
And I remember feeling really different. Like, again, I remember seeing an image. I think it was yeah, I remember seeing an image online, and it was just Christian Bale in the suit, and he was perched somewhere. And I remember going, just from this image alone, it felt different.
right.
And I remember just being like, something feels different about this. I keep put my finger on it. And when obviously when you watch the film, you're kind of just taken back. It just like, I don't want to just, be so crudely say how good it is, but just how good it really
Right.
is. And you're just kind of taken back at how it felt different than anything we had seen prior. And it was already a difficult task because, as you mentioned, like, he's going against the grain a bit because up to this point, people were kind of over it. They were just kind of like, no, like Batman and Robin, dude, it just,
Right.
it killed it. You're not gonna. And he came out there and he swung for the fences,
Yeah.
man.
And because we've seen several takes, we saw a darker take with Burton with Batman and Batman
Hmm.
Returns, and then we went back to campy with
Hmm.
Schumacher with Batman Forever and Batman and Robin. And as far as live action, Warner Brothers was just scared to try this again. You
Yeah.
know, but after Memento came out in 2000, Insomnia came out in 2002. It was, after that they said, well, let's see what Nolan can do with this, and
Yeah.
I'd like to think Nolan pitched a couple other movies that he wanted to do, and
Yeah.
they said, hey, do this, and then we'll
Look
let
at
you.
look at this look at this Batman movie. You know
Right,
what I mean? Look at this Batman movie, which would make sense too, because like a lot of other directors, especially when they're in a franchise, they'll work on their franchise. But Nolan had a Batman movie, then an original movie, a Batman movie, an original movie. So it might be exactly what you said. It might have been the studio saying, "Hey, take a look at this. Take a look at this Batman. See
right.
see where we go from there, and then we'll see what else happens." It could, quite a possibly could have been that.
Yeah, absolutely. Nolan went on record as saying that this was a character. If he was going to do superhero, this would be the one he would want to do because it was the
And he
most,
nailed it.
it was the most intriguing one. He wanted to make a Batman grounded in reality,
Yeah.
and he wanted you to believe that this could actually happen.
Yeah.
And that's what he did. We didn't try to do superpowers or anything like that. There was a lot of science involved. You know, I mean, the movie itself, it's definitely a Nolan movie. We get a lot of
Yeah.
flashbacks. We get a lot of hard cuts. We get the Hans Zimmer score swelling. It's a Nolan movie for sure.
Yes, 100%.
I wasn't a fan of finding out that Rachel Dawes was going to be a major player in this movie because at the time I was a bit of a comic purist.
Mhm.
And after seeing the movie, I was sold because
That's Nolan, that's how he works.
that I was sold. I said, "Oh, well, we needed the Rachel Dawes character. We had no idea what she was going to become later on, but we needed the Rachel Dawes character to kind of provide that soft side to Bruce.
Mhm.
That other persona, as you would say, the real Bruce. There's
Yeah.
the billionaire playboy, but then Bruce shows the real Bruce. to Rachel when he sees her.
Yeah, because it's her character in the movie that I think is the only one who openly says it, where she's like, "No, this is your mask.
Right.
Like this is your mask. The Batman is who you are." And I think that because she is that one character who's known him his entire life, even though there was a gap of years where they weren't in contact with
Right.
with each other, she still knows him. And I like you, I don't think I was as hard against it, but I remember feeling a little maybe jarring is the word. Because when you see him as a child, he's playing with this young child and they have a relationship. I'm like, who is she supposed to be? Like my
Right.
initial reaction was like, who is she? Wait, so she's around when he falls and gets
Right.
scared by the bat. She's around for this. Like, who's she supposed to be? And then
Right.
as the story went on, it just started to like fall away. Like I was like, all right, like I'm in it. I get her
Right.
purpose. So I was like, okay, let's go.
We got to see Joe Chill for the first time live action. I thought that was
Yes,
great.
we did.
And not to knock Burton and Batman, that's a great movie, but he didn't want to do Joe Chill. He made it be the Joker was the one that killed Batman's parents as
Yeah.
Jack Napier. You know, as a purist, I'm not a fan of that decision, but
Yeah.
but I can't knock how great Batman was at the time when it came out and what it meant for
Yeah.
superhero movies. That decision I'm not okay with, but as a movie, Burton did a good job with it, but Nolan says, no, we're going to go back to the comic roots here. We're going to give you guys, we're going to get
Mhm.
sweaty and show
Yes.
you that it's Joe Chill. Joe Chill's the person that ended up doing that. Shout out to Richard Brake. This was his breakout role, and he ended up doing
Yeah.
more things later on, but that's as far as that goes. Batman Begins got nominated for an Oscar for Best Cinematography.
Bro. It
It
deserved it. It
Yeah,
deserved it.
it didn't win, but it
Mm-mm.
got nominated, and this ends up being a theme for Nolan's movies. He continues to be nominated for Oscars and wins his
Mhm.
movies, either wins or nominations. Memento came out in 2001. It got nominated for Best Original Screenplay.
Mhm.
Nolan, actually, he co-wrote it with his brother, and then Best Film Editing. And there was somebody else that was nominated for that. Surprisingly, Insomnia, with 3 Oscar-winning actors, didn't get nominated for anything. Same
Nothing.
team and everything, Nolan's team and such. But now we're back again with these Oscar nominations. So I thought that was really cool. Before we move on to the cast, anything you'd like to add as far as, your feelings now that you've gotten to see it again recently and, just how you feel?
There's a couple things. Every time I watch it, I get flashbacks of what it was like to watch it for the first time. As weird as that is, I saw it in theaters. I saw it with my dad because I've whenever I was really excited about something, I wanted my dad to be a part of it. And I was like, hey, dad, we got to go see Batman Begins. And he was like, Batman, I don't want to see a Batman movie. You know what I mean? Like the
Right.
perception of these movies were really different. And I remember like, no, it's different. It's going to feel like he's in the real world. You'll love it. You know what I mean? So I always have those fun memories come up when I watch it, which is great. And watching it now, like, again, I've watched this movie so many times, and
Right.
each time I watch it, I'm still hit with an awe. You know what I mean? Just like I can't believe that this movie exists and it's as good and as pure as it is, because he took something that, again, in my opinion, was pretty much dead in the water, and he grounded it and he made it so that way I felt like anybody could have watched this movie, whether you were a comic book purist, whether you were a casual fan, whether you were someone that just like blockbuster movies, and you could watch this movie and enjoy it. And I remember just being like, that's a good movie. You know what I mean? Like a
Right.
lot of times people feel alienated. Like they're like, oh, I'm not in comic book films. And they watch it, go, yeah, that felt like a comic book film. I wasn't really a fan. But this was one of those movies that I feel like, we said it with other films, especially with Nolan, like they kind of surpassed the genre. And watching it, I got to watch it today, and I'm watching it and I'm still in awe of it. Like the pacing is still perfect. I don't mind that we have to wait almost an hour to see him
Right.
as the Batman. It feels so earned. So like I still get those feelings
Right.
having watched this movie over 20 times. And that says a lot about this movie as a whole, that I can see it that many times. And each time I watch it, I'm just kind of taken back by it. You know
Yeah,
what I mean?
2
So,
hours and 20 minutes, by the way.
dude, they fly,
2
man.
hours
Like
and 2 hours and 20 minutes, and an hour until we see Batman,
it's insane. And I've heard the argument. I've heard people I've known people go, "Oh, I wish we'd have seen Batman sooner. Like, I wish we could have seen him right away." And I've heard other people go, "No, it's perfect." Like, again, I'm in that camp that I thought it was perfect. It was a great way because it felt more than just a Batman origin. It's almost like a Bruce Wayne origin as well. Like, we're getting everything. We're learning so much about this character. And it's a testament to the movie. It's a testament to the directing from Nolan, the cast, from everyone involved, that I can watch this movie as many times as I have and watch it today in 2023 and still get moved by just everything surrounding this movie. It's in a very small list of what many would deem like a perfect movie.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Show a little love to the cast before we move on
Yeah.
to some notable
Yeah.
lines here. Obviously, we have Christian Bale as the lead Bruce Wayne
Bro.
Batman. I mean, before this, not much to go off of. American Psycho and
Mhm.
Equilibrium. That's it.
Yeah.
Maybe The Machinist. Maybe I want to say The Machinist because he had to put on a bunch of weight
Bro.
to play Batman, and as you had said, like he was described as being a bear because
A
of how big he
bear.
got.
A bear. The crazy thing was that he lost so much weight for the machinist. Then they said, "Hey man, you have to bulk up," and they said that he got too big.
Right.
So they were like, then he had to cut down again because they said when he showed up, he was like a bear. And we talk about this. The commitment that Bale has to his body for a performance is unreal.
Right.
I don't. I. I so correct me if I'm wrong. In my opinion, I can't think of another actor out there in Hollywood that has, as many times as Bale has done it, has been that committed to a role where he changes his physique as
Right.
often as he does. It's numerous films he's done it, but it's that commitment that he has to the role. And like Bale, dude, come on. Bale
Absolutely.
physically, Bale, he crushed it. And then, as we mentioned, I love this aspect of getting the playboy billionaire, the duality of it all. I love seeing that. I love seeing when his mask comes off with his loved ones, when he's around Alfred, when he's around Rachel. I love when he's got the playboy persona. I love that. It's one of my favorite things about Batman. I think that's one of the things that drew Bale to the role, was that duality, was that split. Like, I liked hearing him talk in interviews about this movie and what he wanted, and it's always been more fascinating to play that character from a lot of actors. A lot of actors want to be Batman because
Right.
of that characteristic that he has. And if you want anybody, you get a chameleon like Bale, he's gonna crush it.
We have Michael Caine as Alfred.
Michael Caine.
Michael Caine
Michael
as
Caine.
Alfred. We have Liam Neeson as Ducard, and would eventually
Yeah.
become known as Ra's al Ghul. Great job by Liam Neeson, and
Yeah.
it would kind of started this arc of Liam Neeson being in action movies. After
Yup.
this, he got taken after this movie, but this I'd like to think this kind of maybe started things. We have Katie Holmes as Rachel Dawes, and looking back, a lot of people like to say Katie Holmes was the weakest person in this movie,
I
and
think that's I do think that's the conception a lot of people have, yeah.
yeah, but I mean, okay, excuse me. Well, she's in a movie with, Christian Bale, Michael Caine, Liam Neeson, Gary Oldman
Gary Oldman, bro.
like cut the woman some slack,
You know what I mean? And in no means, at least from my perspective, I don't think she's bad in the movie at all.
I
I don't think
don't.
she's bad. But again, she is surrounded by Oscar caliber performers. And I'm not saying she
Right,
can't be that, but in a lot of people's eyes, and I was a big Dawson's Creek fan. In a lot of people's eyes, they still saw Joey. Like, that
right,
was her biggest role to date, was playing Joey in Dawson's Creek. And now she's in this Batman blockbuster film with all these top billed actors that many of us have known for years. For some people, it's a little like, oh, she's kind of the weakest. I'm like, I don't think
right,
she's weak in any sense of the word, but
and
I that's what people seem
right.
to say.
In my opinion, I just trust Nolan with his casting.
Yeah.
I'm sure other women read for this role, but he saw something in Katie Holmes. He said, "No, I want her for my movie."
Yeah.
And I already mentioned Gary Oldman.
Dude.
Gary
One of the
Oldman,
greatest, one of the greatest of all time, Gary Oldman.
yeah, great actor. Sergeant Gordon, eventually Lieutenant Gordon, not commissioner, not yet.
Not yet.
We have Killian Murphy as Jonathan Crane and the Scarecrow.
Bro.
Once again, just talented actor, would go on to do many things later on. He read for Batman
Yes.
as
Have you
did
seen the footage? Have
I
you seen it?
did,
I have
I
as well.
did,
Yep.
and Guy Pearce from Memento. Both those guys
Yeah.
read for Batman, but Bale, who the studio had been discussing playing the role for some time now, he won Nolan over.
It's
So
always great seeing that type of footage too, because you get to see all of them. And it's
yeah,
interesting because you see them and then you see Bale and you're like, I get it. I
yeah,
get it.
yep,
I get it. And like I do love the fact that you had Murphy read for Bruce and Nolan was like, it's not a right fit, but I got something
I
for
got
you.
something for you.
And he's Crane, and when you watch him as Crane, I'm like, I couldn't see anybody else do that. You know,
Yeah,
I see him like he is Scarecrow. I'm like, oh, nobody else could have did what he did.
absolutely. And Murphy just has this. He has a unique look to him.
Yes.
So he's played a lot of villains. He's played a lot of disturbing roles. So it's just kind of like let's lean into what you're good at.
Yep.
Play the role disturbing, but then he has this little like comedic side to it
Mhm.
too. So absolutely. We have Tom Wilkinson, talented actor as Carmen Falcone,
Yes.
and we have Ken Watanabe as Decoy Ra's al Ghul,
Yep.
and of course the great Morgan Freeman as Lucius Fox. What a cast! Just
Dude.
you know,
Stacked.
and Nolan would go on to do this for his career. Just
Yes.
stack cast time and time and time again. You got all these people for a rebooted Batman movie. Like, imagine being an actor. And the last time we saw Batman on film, it was Batman and Robin. And
Yeah.
now, your agent or publicist is telling you, well, we got this up and coming director. He's doing the Batman reboot. What do you think? You know, some of these people must have been terrified to be in
That's what
this
that's
movie.
yeah,
I mean,
like
obviously Bale wanted it, obviously, because that would have
yeah.
helped his career, but some of the others are like, are you sure? you
Yeah.
know?
A Batman movie?
Right.
What the last movie with George Clooney, we're doing that. We're doing
Right.
"Hey, everybody, chill." We're doing that again,
Right.
and I can imagine what it would have been like for them to read that script and go, "Oh, wait a
Right.
minute."
And general audiences, they're not geeky. They're not geeks.
No,
They're,
no,
you know, they they don't care that the animated series did well, that Justice League Unlimited did well. They don't
nope.
care about how the comic books are going or anything else. All they know is movies. Movies is going to be the biggest reach. And
Hmm.
in much of the general public's mind, Batman and Robin was the last time. So, and in a way, maybe that's what probably held Batman Begins back from doing even better at the box office was
Yeah.
because of, the bad taste that it left in everyone's mouths from Batman and Robin. But
And we'll discuss when we move on in the filmography, but there's a big difference in box office returns between Batman Begins and The Dark Knight, and we'll
oh
talk about that when
yes,
we get there.
huge.
So again, I think like you said that there might have been a little bit of hesitancy for people to even go see this because they're like, oh, it's Batman. They're not really
Right,
entirely too sure. But I think that the word of mouth on this one was so good that I think that people started to go, wow, did you guys see Batman Begins? It's like, yeah, I missed it in the theater, but I saw it on home release. It's a fantastic. They're making a sequel, really?
right.
And I think that there was a lot that came out that people were like, oh, we gotta go see the follow-up. So
Right. And between Fox, Marvel Studios hadn't come together yet. So we had
mm-mm,
Fox and Sony, just doing all these different movies here and there. Some of the X-Men movies were a little successful. We have Raimi with the Spider-Man movies. Some were kind of hit or miss, like Daredevil,
mhm.
Punisher. Well, I like the first Punisher movie, but it didn't hit with
I
the audience.
do too.
you know?
Tom
Yeah.
Jane is a great Punisher.
We
I love that
I
movie.
think we might have had a Fantastic Four movie at this point. We had a few
Ooh.
Blade movies. So
Oh, Blade, yeah. We definitely had Blade. I think we had the first Fantastic Four. I can't recall when the sequel came out. So yeah, there was a little bit out there, but it wasn't nearly what it is today, where there's a comic book movie every week on release.
yeah,
So yeah, so again, I can understand actors being hesitant, but man, like again, I don't know what they did to get these guys in the room. Maybe it was just Nolan's name. Maybe
right,
Nolan's name was enough because again, you had Memento and you had Insomnia, which are both
right.
really strong films with strong performances. It's Insomnia. Come on, We talked about this. Like the
Yes.
performance in there alone is just like, so maybe, the word of mouth was like, yo, that Christopher Nolan guy, like he's making Batman
Exactly.
Begins. Like, and like you said, Bale absolutely want to be a part of this.
Yeah. So we're going to move on to the notable lines section here. And we're going to do some reading here. All right. Let me know when you're ready, Ricardo.
Oh, I'm ready. I got my stuff up, ready to
All
go.
right, then. Well, I'm sorry, but anytime we do something like this, I'm gonna have you play Batman. You're gonna play Batman or Superman every single time.
Okay. I
Oh, I
was looking for you to
surprised you.
say,
You thought I was gonna play
yeah.
Batman. Nope.
I thought you were gonna say, all right, anytime I could be Batman, I'll be Batman. I was gonna be like, and you will be Batman. And I was like, oh, I'm Batman.
No, yeah. Well,
Oh
there's a
boy.
reason here because
Oh boy.
Ra's al Ghul is a dream role of mine, and
Yeah, that is right.
I
That
want to
is
play
right.
Ducard, who's Ra's. So that's the only
That is
reason. To be otherwise, I probably would want to play Batman.
valid.
Yeah.
Valid point. Yes.
So
Okay.
yeah,
Okay.
Ra's is a dream role of mine. So
Okay.
he's not Al Ghul yet. It's still Ducard. So I have Ducard
Mhm.
and Bruce. This is during the montage of them training, but they have a nice dialogue here. And do you still feel responsible for your parents' death?
My anger outweighs my guilt.
Come. You've learned to bury your guilt with anger. I will teach you to confront it and to face the truth. And you know how to fight 6 men. We can teach you how to engage 600. You know how to disappear. We can teach you to become truly invisible.
Invisible?
Avi! Always mind your surroundings. Let's move back here. The ninja understands that invisibility is a matter of patience and agility. Always mind your surroundings. Ninjutsu employs explosive powders
As weapons?
or distractions. Theatrically and deception are powerful agents. You must become more than just a man in the mind of your opponent. Show a prisoner.
Who is he?
He was a farmer. Then he tried to take his neighbor's land and became a murderer. Now he's a prisoner.
What'll happen to him?
Justice. Crime cannot be tolerated. Criminals thrive on the indulgence of society's understanding. Your parents' death was not your fault. It was your father's. Anger does not change the fact that your father failed to act.
The man had a gun.
Would that stop you?
I've had training.
That training is nothing. Will is everything. The will to act.
Yield.
You haven't beaten me. You have sacrificed sure footing for a killing stroke. Bruce falls in the water. We cut to the campfire scene. Rub your chest. Your arms will take care of themselves. You are stronger than your father.
You didn't know my father.
But I know the rage that drives you. That impossible anger. Strangling the grief until the memory of your loved one is just poison in your veins. And one day you catch yourself wishing the person you loved had never existed, so you'd be spared your pain. I wasn't always here in the mountains. Once, I had a wife, my great love. She was taken from me. Like you, I was forced to learn there are those without decency who must be fought without hesitation, without pity. Your anger gives you great power, but if you let it, it will destroy you, as it almost did me.
What stopped it?
Vengeance.
That's no help to me.
Why, Bruce? Why could you not avenge your parents? End scene.
And see.
Really enjoyed this. It's a montage, but throughout you're seeing them bond over the situation. They're talking about the vengeance. It's him. Your parents' death was not your fault. You keep blaming yourself. You're thinking he's going to blame Joe Chill. No, he's going to blame his father.
His father, he was too weak. It's like, ooh.
Yeah, so but he's fueling Bruce to fight back and such, and really enjoyed the sequence. I had to include it here. Your thoughts, Ricardo?
Yeah, it's good because, like you said, I think the biggest thing to take away from this montage, as much as we're seeing Bruce train, we're seeing that camaraderie. We're seeing how close they're becoming. It's the master, it's the teacher and the student. It's that
Yeah, it's great.
relationship, and he's learning from him, and they're building that camaraderie, that brotherhood. Again, it comes in later when he wants him to execute the farmer. He's pleading with him. He's like,
Right.
please just do this. Like there's a relationship there, and you can feel that. And I think that you feel that through this montage and everything else. And then he's also triggering a rage, and he wants that vengeful side of the show. And he's like, it's like, it wasn't your fault, you were a child. And he was like, yo, it was your father's failure to act. You know what I mean? And I love that aspect of it. And I love the aspect of the conversation that they have where he says, Bruce is like, he had a gun. He goes, like, so what? You know what I mean? He goes, you could have stopped. He goes, yeah, but I've had training. And he goes, training is nothing if you don't have the will to act. Like, it's
Right.
all about the will to act. That's what we need to put forward, is that will to act. And I love that aspect of this conversation. And him telling him, like, hey, it doesn't matter. Like, all that training means nothing without the will to act, which will eventually come into play when he refuses to act, in a sense where he would have to execute a man. He's like, he has all those skills,
Right.
but in that moment where he has to make that choice to kill a man, he's like, I won't do it. It's that failure to act that at the moment, he's like, oh, you're weak. You have that compassion that's going to cost you one day. But yeah, this whole stuff is great.
Yeah, I like the always mind your surroundings, because he says that many times to him. And, Bruce gets the upper hand, and it's just like, oh, you got me, but you weren't busy minding your surroundings because we're on ice. And the entire time I've been chopping away at the ice, and now you're going to fall in.
Yep.
So that the criminals, they will do anything to get the upper hand first. So you need to mind your surroundings. Stop letting, the vengeance fuel you, because it's going to blind you, so.
Yeah.
So this next scene is Rachel and Bruce, and it's the hotel scene. So I'm going to be Rachel, and Ricardo's going to be Bruce. Bruce?
Rachel?
I'd heard you were back. What are you doing?
Just swimming here. Wow, it's good to see you.
You were gone a long time.
I know. How are things?
The same. Job's getting worse.
Can't change the world on your own.
What choice do I have when you're too busy swimming?
Rachel, all this, it's not me. It's inside. I am more.
Bruce. Deep down, you may still be that same great kid you used to be. But it's not who you are underneath. It's what you do that defines you. I had to include that because I know you enjoy that scene and that moment.
I love that scene. Again, yeah. I said that I feel like there's a third. I say we're getting three. We're getting more than a duality here, because again, she's acknowledging, like, again, we know that Bruce Wayne, the playboy, is a mask. Like, we understand that as a mask. And everyone, the physical interpretation, then there's the Batman. But then in this moment, there's this 20+ year relationship between him and her that he doesn't have with anybody else.
Right.
And it's almost like his shield is down, his guard is down. And even though he just spent this whole time trying to be the biggest douchebag in the building, in that moment, he wants her to know, like, hey, that's not me. He's not giving her a reason. He's just like, that's not, hey, listen, look, that's not me, right? Like, right. It's not who I am inside, and it's a really good scene.
So next here we have the moment where Ducard reveals that he is Ra's al Ghul at the party.
Yeah.
30th birthday party.
You're not Ra's al Ghul. I watched him die.
But is Ra's al Ghul immortal? Are his methods supernatural?
Or cheap parlor tricks to conceal your true identity? Ra's?
Surely a man who spends his nights scrambling over the rooftops of Gotham wouldn't begrudge me dual identities.
I saved your life.
I warned you about compassion, Bruce.
Your quarrel is with me. You let these people go.
You are welcome to explain the situation to them.
everyone, everybody, I I want to thank you all for coming here tonight and drinking all of my booze. No, really. There's a thing about being a Wayne that you're never short of a few freeloaders like yourselves to fill up your mansion with. So here's to you people. Thank you.
Guest. That's enough, Bruce.
Oh no, I'm not finished. To all of you phonies, all of you two-faced friends, you sycophantic suck-ups who smile through your teeth at me, please leave me in peace. Please go. Stop smiling. It's not a joke. Please leave. The party's over. Get out.
Amusing, but pointless. None of these people have long to live. Your antics at the asylum have forced my hand.
So Crane was working for you.
His toxin is derived from the organic compound found in our blue flowers. He was able to weaponize it.
He's not a member of the League of Shadows.
Of course not. He thought our plan was to hold the city to ransom.
But really, you're going to release Crane's poison on the entire city.
Then watch Gotham tear itself apart through fear.
You're going to destroy millions of lives.
Only a cynical man would call what these people have lives, Wayne. Crime. Despair. This is not how man was supposed to live. The League of Shadows has been in check against human corruption for thousands of years. We sacked Rome, loaded trade ships with plague rats, burned London to the ground. Every time a civilization reaches the pinnacle of its decadence, we return to restore the balance.
Gotham isn't beyond saving. Give me more time. There are good people here.
You're defending a city so corrupt. We have infiltrated every level of its infrastructure. When I found you in that jail, you were lost, but I believed in you. I took away your fear and I showed you a path. You were my greatest student. It should be you standing by my side, saving the world.
I'll be standing where I belong, between you and the people of Gotham.
No one can save Gotham. When a forest grows too wild, a purging fire is inevitable and natural. Tomorrow, the world will watch in horror as the greatest city destroys itself. The movement back to harmony will be unstoppable this time.
You attacked Gotham before.
Of course. Over the ages, our weapons have grown more sophisticated. With Gotham, we tried a new one, economics. But we underestimated underestimated some of Gotham's citizens, such as your parents, gunned down by one of the very people they were trying to help. Create enough hunger, and everyone becomes a criminal. Their deaths galvanize the city into saving itself, and Gotham has limped on ever since. We are back to finish the job. And this time, no misguided idealists will get in the way. Like your father, you lack the courage to do all that is necessary. If someone stands in the way of true justice, you simply walk up behind them and stab them in the heart.
I am gonna stop you.
You never did learn to mind your surroundings. Justice is balance. You burned my house and left me for dead. Consider us even.
This is that scene from Heat with Pacino and De Niro. You have the
Yeah.
two, you have the antagonist and protagonist, and they're just talking.
Incredible.
And it's so good because you're getting everything at once. You're getting the reveal, you're getting the true intentions, you're getting the idea of Bruce saying, "Hey, like we can still save Gotham," and Ghul, Al Ghul is like, "Nah, man, this place cannot be saved." Like,
right.
We've tried it before, it didn't work. Because of your parents, they got in the way. And one of the hardest lines, he goes, they were killed by a person that they were trying to help.
Right.
And it's like, ugh, that just hurts.
Right. And it's almost like we get a real, was the League of Shadows responsible for the death of the Waynes?
There's
It
a
was
lot. He look.
yeah,
He pulls up a history lesson, man.
right,
He goes, London. We send rats on ships. We took down Rome, and it's like, how many disasters on at this level have they been responsible for? You
right.
know, and it's like, oh, but they tried with Gotham. It didn't work the first time, but now they're trying it again. It's like,
Yeah.
oh man,
In a way, it was almost like Bruce coming to find them was a happy accident,
yes,
and it was just like, oh, well, if we can get him, then we can get what we want,
yeah,
So love this scene. I mean, Liam Neeson's great throughout the entire movie, but for me, this was the best scene of them just going back and forth. And I included that part with him getting to be the playboy a little bit,
yeah.
because it's great.
It's so good.
He
Yeah, and
ships.
that's what I love about the duality, I will always appreciate duality about that character or many characters, but Batman especially. And I love that he's just like, let these people go. He's like, you're free to tell them whatever you want, like you
Right,
can tell them the truth. And instead, he just he locks it in and goes, hey, no, hey guys, hey, I want to thank all of you, and he just switches. And then
right,
as soon as they leave, he switches right back, and
right
he's
back.
just like, listen, and I'm like, yes, like I love that aspect of it.
All right, we got one more scene here. It's Bruce and Rachel at the end of the movie, and where she talks about the mask that he has.
I'm sorry I didn't tell you, Rachel.
No, no, Bruce, I'm sorry. The day that Chill died, I said terrible things.
But true things. I was a coward with a gun, and justice is more. It's about more than revenge. So, thank you.
I never stopped thinking about you, about us. And when I heard you were back, I started to hope. But then I found out about your mask.
Batman's just a symbol, Rachel.
No, this is your mask. Your real face is the one that criminals now fear. The man I loved, the man who vanished, he never came back at all. But maybe he's still out there somewhere. Maybe someday, when Gotham no longer needs Batman, I'll see him again. Prove me wrong,
About what?
Your father would be very proud of you, just like me.
Bro, there's a line that when she says, the man who vanished, he never came back.
Yeah,
And I don't know why that hits, because it's again, they were the closest thing he's ever had to a best friend was Rachel. And even though he's standing right in front of her, she acknowledges the fact that he is a completely different individual and is now driven by something. And I don't know why that line hits so hard. As like, the man who vanished never came back. Like, you're under the impression you're who you used to be, and you're not.
right,
And I love the mass conversation. I love that conversation, because again, it's almost like she's figured it out before he has, because she goes, the mask, and he goes, oh, Batman's just a symbol, and she goes, no, 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 this right here, this is your mask, like this is the mask.
right.
And I'm like, oh, that's so good. Again,
Yeah.
it's she figured it out before he did, and I think that's so cool.
It's a tender moment too because they do share a kiss. So you're
Mhm.
thinking, yay, they're going to be together. And she's like, nah, we can't,
No, we can't,
you
because
know?
she knows that this is going to drive him.
Right,
This will be his driving factor for as many years. And maybe he's still out there. You know what I mean? Kind of
right,
leaving it open, like, hey, maybe there will be a day when Gotham no longer needs the Batman, but until then, we can't do this.
right. So we're going to start wrapping things up here. Oh, man.
Bro,
a, lo-
listen,
a lot of people, yeah, I'll let you get to that in a second here. A lot of
go
people
for it.
talk about the Dark Knight,
Hmm.
and that's great. And we will talk about the Dark Knight and how great the Dark Knight is. But without Batman Begins, there is no Dark Knight.
Facts.
And um, I enjoy a good origin. And for me, Batman Begins is one of the best origin superhero origin movies ever made. Um,
Period.
some people think it's the best superhero origin movie. That's a bold statement. But it's up there. We have to look at what superhero movies were at the time. This is before the MCU even started.
Yep.
We've had blockbusters leading up to this, but not to the point of what superhero movies are today. As of this recording, it's May 2023, but we had a long way to go before that boom hit.
Yeah.
And Nolan took a lot of risks. He didn't go campy because some of these superhero movies, they were still a little campy, like the X movies, they were fun, but there was some camp involved.
Yeah. Yeah.
The Raimi movies, they were all camp, they were
Yes.
very emotional. They were fun. So Nolan took a risk and it paid off. But for me, a lot of people sleep on Batman Begins. Everyone wants to talk about The Dark Knight. But for me, it doesn't happen unless Batman Begins. And you just go down the list here, just the introduction of Lucius Fox, of Gordon, of Alfred, of the Rachel Dawes character. We had no idea how big of a role Rachel Dawes was going to play in The Dark Knight, and we
Yeah.
needed her, for Batman Begins here.
Bold statements are going to come out of my mouth.
Okay.
It's again, I think you're accurate when saying that. I think it's fair for people to say this is probably one of, or if not the greatest superhero origin film to date. I would not argue or debate anyone with that. We can all have our personal favorites. You can sit back and you say, "Oh, I think this is better, but this is my personal favorite," et cetera, et cetera. When it comes to the Batman, I don't think we're ever going to get another Batman origin film that is going to connect and hit as hard as this did. You know what I mean? I don't think it's possible because again, we have to take into consideration the timing of when the movie was released as well. As you brought up, there weren't the MCU hadn't started. We weren't filled with a barrage of comic book films and superhero films. That wasn't a thing. And it was already going it was already fighting an uphill battle having to deal with what happened to the Batman franchise. So you have to consider all those variables as well when you talk about the movie in itself. And for the movie to come out against all those variables in a time where there weren't comic movies everywhere, in a time where people were completely done with the Batman, to this point, a lot of people still didn't really know who Nolan was. Like casual viewers didn't know Christopher Nolan. You know what I mean? This was the movie where I started to really pay attention to Christopher Nolan, where I was like, oh my God, this guy who made this movie, give him everything. You know what I mean? I was like, oh, like as much as I enjoyed Memento and Insomnia, this was the movie that I think turned gears for a lot of people, not just myself, but like, oh, that Christopher Nolan guy, pay attention to him. That is a phenomenal filmmaker right there. So I don't, considering those variables, I think it's that lightning in the bottle. I don't think we're ever going to get another one like that. It's what many people would say about team up movies. They'll say like, oh, the Avengers was the lightning in the bottle, so any team up movie after is just another team up movie. That's a common thing that people are expressing or whatever. And I think this Batman dealing with all the variables at play, that we're never going to get that situation again. We're never going to have a Batman movie that needs to be as important as this Batman movie was, because this not only boomed more Batman movies, but is responsible for comic book movies coming back into the light in the way that they were. Like, I felt like comic book movies were able to be seen as something different again, as opposed to just being campy or silly or something that you would just take your kids to go see. Batman Begins kind of went, hey, we can make comic movies like this. We can make them, I don't want to say edgy, but we can make it more mature. We can make it more grounded. It was, I think it was the movie that started the realness, that people were like, oh, we can make comic films feel more grounded. Because again, up to that point, like even with the X-Men, there's campiness to it. You're dealing with mutants and abilities and powers and Spider-Man and everything else. But this was like, hey, it's just a guy in a suit. You know what I mean? Just a guy in a suit, and we're going to ground. He's going to dress up as Bat and do amazing things. So I think when you take all those variables into consideration, it helps separate Batman Begins into its own category, and rightfully so. I'm so grateful when I hear people say that this is their favorite. I have a few friends that I know personally that have said that this is their favorite Batman movie of all time, that it's their favorite of the trilogy, and I can't argue against that, because in my opinion, Batman Begins is a masterpiece from beginning to end. Like, if you want to nitpick little things here and there, you can do that with every movie, but I think it is a masterpiece. I think it is great in everything that it sets out to do. And we talked about it before, and we'll say it again, because The Dark Knight is so praised that I think people forget how great Batman Begins really is. Like, when people want to watch the trilogy, like if they pick one movie, usually people say, oh, let's watch The Dark Knight today. Like, let's, you want to watch The Dark Knight? Let's go watch The Dark Knight, because it's just goated in that atmosphere. And people forget, like, Batman Begins, man, is, in my opinion, like, Batman Begins and Dark Knight are here, man. Like, they're here. They're neck
Okay.
and neck. You know what I mean?
Okay,
Like,
that's a bold statement too. Yeah.
I think they're both just as good as the other. They're just different. Like, you have different layers, you have different characters, you have different performances that separate the two. But I think in terms of, like, me walking away from these movies, when I walked away from Batman Begins and I walk away from The Dark Knight, I'm like, they're both perfect masterpieces. You know what I mean? I may enjoy one more than the other.
Right.
Like, I may tell you, like, I enjoy The Dark Knight more because of the performances, because of the writing, because of the thriller aspect. But I can acknowledge that when I walked out of both these movies, I was just like, wow. You know what I mean? Like, again, which is why I understand when people say, oh, I think Batman Begins is better. I'm like, rightfully so, man. You know, preach that to the high heavens, because it's a fantastic movie. But I think everything about it worked. I think the duality of Bale worked, Bruce Wayne, I should say. It's one thing that I missed about the Batman, and we talked about that. So I'm happy when I watch this trilogy and I get the duality of it all. I love the performances. I love the stacked cast. I love the practicality. I love the horror aspects to it. I love the humor. We talked about this. There is plenty of humor in this movie. It's just not shoved in your face. You know what I mean? It's just like all those little bits here and there. And I absolutely love that about this movie. Batman Begins is that's dude, Batman Begins is a 10 out. Dude, Batman Begins, Dark Knight are both 10s to me. You know
All
what I
right.
mean? Like,
Well,
they're both like, I'm like, like, they're both that good. And again, for different reasons. You're talking about a sequel versus a movie that kickstarted all of it. And I got to give major credit, because again, everyone's kind of sitting there like this, right? They're like, all right, we got a Batman movie. And then by the time you leave, you're just like clapping, or you're in awe, you know? So I don't know. I think Batman Begins is, you know, in that conversation for greatest origin superhero movie of all time. I definitely think it's in that conversation. I think it deserves to be there. I think if you tell me that if you like this, you know, as your favorite of the whole trilogy, I agree with you 100%. If you like another one of the trilogy more, I agree with you 100%. You're not wrong. You know what I mean?
right.
You're not wrong. But it changed the landscape for me, and I was so grateful that I got to see this in theaters with my dad. I've seen two superhero movies in theater with my dad. Just two. Um, it was Batman Begins and it was Man of Steel. And I'm grateful that, like, it was those movies where I felt rejuvenated the character again. That I got to share that experience with my dad at the theaters and whatnot, and have him walk out and go, man, that was actually really good. And I'm like, exactly, right? It was good. So yeah, I have those memories attached to Batman Begins as well, and I'll always appreciate those. But man, just, it's a masterpiece, my boy. I could rant about it all day.
I
Masterpiece,
like that.
my boy.
A lot of bold statements, good
I said,
stuff.
I said, it. I said, bro, I got some bold statements to make. It's just,
Well,
it's hard for me to not like praise it as much as I do, because it's like, I think it's a perfect movie. I think it's a perfect movie. I think everything about it works.
when this movie had come out, for me, it was just such a personal experience because I had already started getting back into comics again in the early 2000s, and there were some great storylines that I had read that this was kind of based on. You know, we have um, The Long Halloween, we have Year One. You know, I read Hush. This was there was a little bit of Hush, more so for The Dark Knight, but you know, Nolan was just diving into these, you know, these storylines as just a foundation. And um, for me, I was just so excited to see a good Batman movie again, a good Batman movie to me anyway.
Yeah.
And you know, Nolan went with the grounded in reality. There was darkness, but it wasn't all darkness. You
Hmm.
know, there was light moments. I keep coming back to that stacked cast. So there was a lot of familiar faces, or faces that would become familiar after this, obviously. Um, for me, it's, to your point, Nolan did such a good job with a Batman origin story that no one else has attempted this yet. You
Mm-mm.
know, we have Snyder with the Snyderverse. He introduced us, excuse me, he introduced us to Batman 20 years in Gotham. So he didn't
Yep.
bother showing us a Batman origin. We saw the Waynes die, but that's just like a flashback, you
Yeah.
know. And then with Reeves with the Batman, that's Batman Year Two. He's not going to
Yep.
show us a Batman origin. We might get flashbacks, but he's not going to do it. You know,
And even James Gunn is not doing it.
right? James Gunn has plans to introduce us. Brave and the Bold, he wants to introduce us to Batman that has Damian Wayne already as his
Yeah.
son. So he may or may not choose to show us. Chances are it's probably not going to happen.
Yeah.
I think, I mean, I watched Gotham. I mean, that was something else, but we
Yeah.
never really got to see his training. It was young Bruce,
It was
you know,
very young
it
Bruce,
was
yeah.
young Bruce. So to see Batman going through all the training and stuff, that's something that we may never see again, or it might be a very long time until we see it again, because I'd like to think that Nolan did such a good job with this that no one else wants to even try. Let's just introduce Batman to the world. We can show the
Yes.
Waynes dying because that's a part of his story if we want to, and flashbacks and stuff. But as far as Batman training, and now let's just introduce Batman's here. It might be a while before we get that again. And for me, that was great. Clearly, this leads into the Dark Knight, which we will discuss. But for me, Batman Begins, absolutely amazing. And Nolan doesn't go right into another Batman movie again. He wants to continue stretching himself as a filmmaker. And that's going to bring us to our next movie, which is The Prestige. So,
Bro, Prestige is so good. So good. But I did want to say I think you're right. I think that there's a lot of people who walked away from this saying like they can't I don't think anybody is gonna try to touch another origin story for Batman after Batman Begins. And like you said, to your point, I think if they do, it's not gonna be for a very, very long time because it's just it's done in such a way that when you look at it, you're like, how can we what else could we do? Like he kind of
right.
nailed everything about that aspect of the character, and he makes us as an audience earn it as well as Bruce. Like Bruce earns the cow, we earn it. We have to wait and we build time. So I think to your point that a lot of other filmmakers are just going to give us an established Batman, whether it's year 2, year 20, year 15, and to say, hey, they know enough, flashback here and there, but that origin story, yeah, Nolan nailed that. We can't touch that for a long time.
Absolutely. All righty, folks. That was our breakdown for Batman Begins as we continue highlighting Christopher Nolan's filmography.
Yeah.
So I just mentioned it. We're going to go in order of release. So the next one is going to be The Prestige. And
Hype.
I'm looking forward to that. But folks, if you could please give us a like, share, and subscribe, we would appreciate it. We always push the subscribe, especially because the more subscriptions we have, that would help us with our reach. So more folks like you can see and listen to the Panel Rose discuss movies
Yeah.
and break down movies. So thank you for that. For Ricardo Segura, this is Anderson Marchak saying thank you for coming to the panel.